Two friends, Alan Dale and Jerry Carew, who grew up just a few streets apart in St. John's East End, have been separated by Canada's geography for 3 decades. They came together virtually during the pandemic to chat about like-minded interests. Alan lives in PEI and Jerry in Newfoundland. Thriving in remoteness has been a common theme for both of them during the pandemic. Gale Force Wins, the podcast is the result.
And welcome to Gale Force Wins. I'm Alan Dale, and with me as always is Jerry Carew. How are you, Jerry?
Alan, I had 2 coffees this morning. I've had several meetings already, so I'm feeling a little bit pumped. It's 7 degrees forecast today. Kind of comes to the weather a lot for me. I think spring is in the air, and I'm just excited to talk to our guest today.
7 degrees in St. John's, Newfoundland. That could be July, Jerry. That's fantastic. Good for you, man. Look, Jerry, I think Gale Force Wins really taken off. We're getting a lot of eyes on what we're doing. And I think that we are looking at things through a different lens, you and I. We are looking at all these great news stories that are happening all around us. In our region in Atlantic Canada, and especially in Newfoundland, we're surrounded by creativity and innovation, resiliency. And it's all colliding and making these wonderful success stories. And really, I think that's what Gale Force Wins is all about, is telling those stories, celebrating that success, because there's a lot of good stories out there. There's a lot of heavy headlines in the news these days, and we're looking at things a little bit differently. We're certainly pleased to have our next guest on with us, Craig Tucker. Craig has been involved in industry in Newfoundland in many, many different facets. And we're certainly excited to hear from Craig about where he sees Newfoundland today and where it can get to. And so we're certainly excited to have Craig Tucker on the podcast with us today. Craig, why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself?
Thanks. Well, guys, just want to say congratulations to both of you on the podcast. As I was looking into some of your past guests and the stories, we too often are focused on that negative. And I'm a positive guy, always been that way. And I believe that we've got to do more in this region to help each other out and really drive the positive stories and successes that are going on. So my background is I've been with, I guess over the last 20 years, I'll deal with that. Been with M5 and the Group M5 Marketing Communications Organization as managing partner. And that was a 15-year journey, had a ton of fun doing that, and really spent my time and cut my chops around Atlantic Canada and really building some great friends. I think as we were talking in the preamble, Alan, that, from my perspective, I've got a lot of good network across the region, and I've been able to do a lot into the maritime side outside of Newfoundland. So my background is really the marketing guy, so to speak, that brings a lot of what I brought to the table. My focus more is on driving business and scale. And so roughly 3 years, almost to the day, I made a decision, a bit of a career change for me, that I decided to switch out of the agency game that I had come to know and love very well, and had done, as I say, for about 20 years prior to that, and made a decision to exit the agency world, and did so, and left M5 in my position, and actually acquired an educational institution, which was a complete shock and awe for me to kind of switch gears. And so I made that decision to kind of shift out of the agency world into the academia world in private education. And quite frankly, it was maybe 2 distinct opposites in many ways, but a lot of fun. And yeah, so I've been on a new journey ever since.
Tell us about this academic institution. What is the value prop there?
Well, it's an interesting angle. So I tell this story quite a bit, and I love telling it. It started 41 years ago with a lady who was working in training and education with Johnson's in their tech department of Johnson Insurance, or the Johnson Tech division, so to speak. And her focus was watching students come in the door, and she felt, and this was a quote that I gotten, she felt there was a better way to educate. And she said, these people are coming in, but they really aren't trained the way that I think they should be. And so she decided one weekend, her and her best friend sat down and had a bottle of Chateauneuf de Pape. And the individual is my mom. And she decided, her and her friend, who was her assistant at the time, said, and you got to know my mom, she doesn't drink wine, but she had a bottle of wine that night. So maybe it was a little tipsy. I don't know. But she decided on that evening, you know what, let's start a training school. And as you can appreciate, 1980, for a female to leave a good paying job as a leader on that team, and exit and scoot to start this private training school, which nobody in their right mind thought. My dad tried to talk her out of it, and she said, no, I'm going to do this, and took it on. And here we are 41 years later. The organization that she had built, I decided as I exited M5 to acquire. So I bought our family business and have taken this on as a new journey.
Wow, Craig, I can see why you like telling that story.
Yeah.
That is
great story.
That is a
Very
heck
proud of her.
of a success. I sure you are. That is a heck of a success story for sure. And you're right. I mean, in the 80s to step out and do that, that's a challenge. That's a leader right there. Wow, that's to be congratulated and to be celebrated. And that's impressive. You know, that whole connection between industry and academia, and training people correctly and educating them correctly, giving them that experiential learning piece. Your mom was early to see that. That's fantastic.
Absolutely.
And but it's such a vital thing even today. I would say that not everybody gets it. Not everybody understands the importance of that. You know, Craig, we had the president of Memorial on just a couple of weeks ago, and she talked a lot about experiential learning and their vision to bring that into their curriculum and her vision for it. So I think it's fantastic. It's certainly, to me, the key to success in the future, to see these things come together. Wouldn't you agree?
We totally agree. And it's interesting, I guess, as I started down this new path or this new journey, you know, it started to dawn on me that there was a lot of kind of a maintenance mode or apathy, or not a lot of energy for new drive. And so as a former chair of Common Ground and heavily involved in the tech sector, I could see right away digital transformation is a great point on the experiential learning side. You know, the industry, we really need to educate, if in particular for Newfoundland and Labrador, the only way out of this mess that we're in fiscally is to make sure we keep educated people in this province and drive our economy that way. Full stop. And doesn't matter if you're a degree from Memorial University, a program from the College of North Atlantic, or a diploma from Keyin College. At the end of the day, the only way out is education. Simple. If we don't invest in our people and invest in retaining our people, I've got two kids. Both kids one's in Calgary and one's in Kingston, Ontario. We're losing the future of our workforce and the future leaders if we continue to send kids outside the province. And so part of that for me is this belief. I sort of take Mom's philosophy when she started of there's a better way. And I adapted that early days and said, there's a better way to educate in this province right now. So I'm on a journey to change private education in Newfoundland and Labrador, and who knows beyond that. I'm not going to, at this point in my career, I don't want to put much pressure on where I'm going next steps, but that's the journey I'm on. And so part of that is when I unlocked early, we did a very deep dive on all of the existing students in-house, and we recognized through the analysis that there was a number of key factors that came out of that research. First and foremost, that it was fascinating, the female to male skew inside our system. So a lack of kind of focus towards young males coming into our programs and doing anything from that perspective. Wellness was a major issue that I had not recognized inside when I sort of started this new road trip I'm on. But mental wellness, physical wellness, financial wellness was emboldened inside our system. And so we made that a big part of our pillar moving forward. But digital transformation was by far the biggest thing. The skills or lack thereof that our students were getting are critical mass. And so we're trying to really change that as an overall disposition for our organization. So that's why one of the early decisions I made was to bring on my business partner, Steve Taylor, who Steve came out of the tech sector and oil and gas sector. So he was heavily involved in digital transformation for the energy sector. And we both realized we've got to do things differently and really drive down innovation and tech inside our organization. And if we can do that effectively, we will change the way in which our students are getting trained and educated.
Wow.
So, Craig, I just got to ask a question there. So you're talking about your company's digital transformation. Are you also talking about a stream of education within your delivery that's transforming the students as well into a digital? Is that what you're saying here?
100%. It's our organization needed to be sort of brought through a digital transformation itself. We've been doing that in a significant way, and that was kind of one of those things where you just realize you're bringing best practices from other experiences that we've had. But you're absolutely right. The notion on it, where I'm going with it, is that I want the journey for the students to be better. So how we educate inside the classroom. So we have invested almost $2.2 million in our new campus on Topsail Road, and it is literally transformed a beautiful, older building into this state-of-the-art, kind of technologically advanced education center. So that was one of the things we needed to do to make sure the ecosystem is set up for our students to be successful. And things like 85-inch flat screens, touchscreen technology, best-in-class internet access for our students, all of those kinds of things. But equally important is the content that we're delivering, right? So if you look today, every worker out there today is a digital worker. And we see, no matter where you look, if you're looking at from a delivery driver today that's dropping off something food-wise to our homes during a pandemic, what are they using? They're using technology to get there. So you're tracking where they are, what's going on, you're rating service after the fact. So every worker today is a digital worker. And if you take that as your baseline assumption and know that we need to educate and train for a digital workforce, then you start to build curriculum around that. So when you look at our healthcare programs, and whether it's a dental assistant program that we teach right now, so we made sure we brought in the best in technology for digital radiography for our dental students. If you look at the ability for personal care attendants through virtual reality, they can take their clients when they go out into the workforce and are dealing with seniors who have early stage Alzheimer's. By showing them virtual reality, wouldn't that be an incredible journey that you could take those patients through and make their lives better when they're actually working? Through the energy workforce and the transition that's going on in the energy sector today, everyone's a digital worker. So yeah, Jerry, what you're talking about is exactly right. We're setting our content and curriculum and our delivery mechanisms up for best-in-class delivery of education to those sectors.
So Craig,
That's exciting, Alan.
It's very exciting. You're adding, I would argue, the most important component. You're adding the people into this equation, into these companies, into this technology sector in Newfoundland, and even the more traditional sectors in Newfoundland. You're adding the people. It must be amazing to go to work every morning and be surrounded by young people that want to learn and learn differently. And it just the beginning of their journey, for you to be a part of it, must be exciting. Tell me about that.
Yeah, it is. What's been disappointing more than anything, but interesting more than anything, is that the pandemic has dramatically changed our landscape. Right. So as I just talked about, we set one of our first sites on, we need a world-class campus in St. John's in particular, and we're transforming all of our campuses now in that direction over the coming years. There's a sort of a long-term plan to get there. But the pandemic changed everything, right? So it's just as we were about, literally our 40th anniversary was almost to the day this time last year, March 17th, and we were ready for our grand opening. Everything was ready to go. Of course, the pandemic just blew that up, and our students, frankly, haven't really had the luxury, in St. John's anyway, to really spend a lot of time in their new campus. So it's been devastating because we've got this beautiful facility that we haven't been able to get to. But so we're excited to get students back. And I think at some point, what's happened with the pandemic is we were our governing body, in that sense, with legislation and so on, really didn't allow us to do as much as we would have liked to in online learning and really drive down that path. However, the pandemic basically forced our hand. We shifted 1,100 staff and students in 12 days, all online seamlessly. And I was very fortunate that I had Steve as a business partner to get us ready for that, because we were already prepared well in advance to kind of shift that. So I would love to say that it's exciting to be around that youth, which I love as a former co-chair of Common Ground and being involved in the tech sector. I love being around young, brilliant minds that really drive and bring a lot of energy to technology. And I just love that. Unfortunately, with the pandemic, it's been distance learning, and a little bit of that social interaction, frankly, is gone. And we'll get back to it, because I think what we're looking to do is that hybrid learning environment where there will be online delivery tied with, in particular, our clinical labs and other things that we do along the way. The students can get back in and socialize. So we've found other ways to kind of do that. We've had, online concerts where we've hired local musicians to play for the students, and we've done trivia and all kinds of other kind of social things to keep our students, give them a sense of social. I mean, as any of us who've been university, college in the past, there's that social interaction, right? And that goes away, unfortunately, in this kind of a pandemic that we're dealing with.
What's the demographic of the students at your school?
Yeah, traditionally, and that's what really astonished me when I took this over 3 years ago. Our numbers were literally skewed dominant female, and I was just blown away by that. So when we look at sort of in that dynamic itself, there was more from a demographic perspective. I think the number was literally 80% female, 20% males. Like, it was just off the chart skewed.
Wow.
And we have roughly the lion's share of that market is in a younger demographic. So what we're finding is the typical learner that's coming to us has been out, what I'll call, kicking around for a few years. So university wasn't the right fit. They've tried a couple of things. They're not really sure what the future entails. And so they're trying to figure it out. And we seem to have a real core base of that type of learner who just didn't fit what the mold was for, hey, you got to leave high school and go to university. The type of positioning of our products that we're offering and we're trying to evolve to that next level is, I call it the American Hockey League of education. So the notion on it is that, we recognize our students coming out are not going to come out at this stage of the game with a university degree. We want them to continue to move towards that, but that's not the prototypical student that's in our door. What we do want them to aspire is a technician, like a dental assistant, that next level. So it's not the NHL, it's the AHL. We sort of stay in that lane of, we want to be best in class in this country in the American Hockey League level for education. And so that's the aspirational perspective where we're trying to head to.
Right. And teach them. And I'm sure that it all peppered in there is the life skills too, right? The ability to communicate and work effectively together as groups, and indeed an appreciation for lifelong learning becomes all a part of that as they go about their journey. So you're on the pointy end of this thing, Craig. You're right in the middle of this emerging tech sector in Newfoundland. A lot of great things happening, and you're a guy right on the pointy end of this thing, providing the workforce into it, the people into it, the great minds into it. Tell us what your feeling is around the technology sector in Newfoundland right now, and there's so many good stories. You had Verafin's story here. That's a big one, right? But you've got Kraken Robotics doing great things. You've got Genoa Design doing great things. Provincial Airlines. There's just so many companies to name there. Tell me about your feeling on what's happened in the tech sector now and where it's going, and where those great young minds that you're producing fit into this.
Yeah, I think it's an excellent question. And I think from my perspective, more than anything, I look at digital transformation is our way out. And how I say that to you, and Steve and I talk about this at length. We live this every single day. So from our perspective, the tech sector provides opportunity. It doesn't matter where we live geographically. You can have layers of teams working remotely in this province. Nobody cares where you are. And it was fascinating to listen to the CEO of Verafin on a call that we did a while back. And her response at the time was, well, she works at Verafin, and you think of, she works at the stock exchange, so she's on NASDAQ side, and you immediately think of NASDAQ being in New York, right? But she's actually in Washington. You go, wait now, how do you connect that dot? Well, it doesn't matter where you are in the world today. Innovation in tech plays out irrelevant to anyone. And so what we have here in this province is we have a ton of creativity, and we have a good work ethic. When you combine those two pieces to the puzzle, I think fundamentally that opens up the sort of the mix, the chemistry for making great employees. From our perspective, where we lean with it is that digital transformation skills permeate. As I said earlier, everybody's a digital worker. And what's fascinating, what we're seeing today is there's significant numbers moving out of the oil and gas sector. And you could sit back and say the sky is falling. Well, I sat through a presentation yesterday from Exxon where they're talking about total digital transformation in this province of everything they're doing so that they can work on land for all of the vessels out in the middle of North Atlantic. And so when you unlock what they're doing, they're shifting and pivoting from a traditional high risk. We understand that they don't like to shift into technology, these oil companies, but they are making those moves. They're getting that there's efficiencies, that there's a better way, and the pandemic has helped globally with a little bit of this. But the notion on it, even on a energy perspective, that workers can work on land and you take away a lot of that risk out at sea. And so that's just a great example of how the province needs to move and shift from what was a traditional oil and gas kind of environment into a digitally remote working technician type or technology type of program. And so we've built a new program. We're in the process of going through that now, a diploma in digital energy. And so we have a new diploma in digital technology called software development and a new diploma in digital energy we're creating, which is all about that. It's all digital transformation skills built by industry for industry. So we've gone out, we've surveyed and met on a series of sessions, soapbox kind of sessions with all the employers. And we've said this simple question: what skills do you need inside your organization? And so once you do that and you start to unlock it, then from there we sort of brought all of that together. That coagulated into, okay, how do we create this model? And we built what we call a subway system. And the idea is there's a journey for the student, a student roadmap we call it. And so we're building skills along that subway system that students can jump on and jump off. They don't have to do the full program. They can do bits and pieces along the way, but ultimately get to the end of the subway line. But it's all through digital transformation. So you can literally shift in and out of varying sectors using the digital transformation skills.
I love the fact, Craig, that you go out and you ask industry what's keeping you up at night. How do we respond to your needs, as opposed to traditionally what a lot of people do, no matter if it's an academic institution or in industry, sales in general, say, here's my product, you want to buy it.
Exactly.
It's such a better approach to say, what's keeping you up at night, and let me
Exactly.
fashion a solution for you. And that, no doubt about it, that's a recipe for success. At the top of the question, or at the top of the answer, Craig, you talked about creativity and work ethic in Newfoundland right now. Where does that come from? Because it's there in spades. And where does it come from?
I think, look, I've worked across the Maritimes, across Atlantic Canada, most of my career. And I would say that not just of Newfoundlanders, I saw that everywhere that I went across the region. I think it's survival skills. I think you have to, we've lived off different elements inside the region. So, but in particular with Newfoundland, Labrador, we've come out of a traditional fishing kind of environment as the core base. And by the way, fishing is still very important to our province. And what you're seeing there, even more so, is digital technology kind of creeping in. And you look at things like aquaculture today. You think of aquaculture and think, oh, that's someone standing on a barge feeding the salmon, for example. No further from the truth. All the innovation in tech, they're flat screens and young kids sitting in front of these screens and looking at girth and radar technology and all of the innovation that makes that up to so again, another example of digital workforce. But from my perspective, the creativity comes from our need to be fun and light and not take life so seriously, and but the need to survive. And I think you have to kind of pivot in order to succeed, especially in these times. I mean, it's economically tough, and the pandemic is shutting down a lot of that creativity of what we can do. So you have to be able to kind of think outside the box. And I think that's what we're trying to do and bring education to the forefront. I sit on the national board for private colleges, and this isn't a slag at any of my peers across the country. I think everyone's creative in that sense. But I look and say we can match wits at a minimum as good as anybody in this country, in some cases better. And why is that? Because we have to find innovative and ingenious ways to kind of get around the process. And I think that speaks to the people here. And I think the more of those type of students we can bring in, and then they become employees and enjoy what they do, then I think that's going to help our economy get out from underneath this.
Yeah, Craig, that is a great explanation. And I mean, in the conversations, I often ask that question from the other guests, right? And I got the chairman of the technology, Newfound Tech, or Tech NL, sorry. He described it as Newfoundlanders can put an arse in a cat.
Yeah, exactly. We've been known to do that. Yeah, that's a phrase. That's a great phrase. Yeah, Paul. And you know, I will say what's interesting today. There's been a shift in the past few years, Alan, in this context, that our industry associations are really, not that they weren't in the past, I don't mean to imply that, but today more than ever, our industry associations here are making a huge difference. And so it's not just a lobbying effort, or they're actually becoming the extension or the conduit with government to help really connect and bridge the membership. So when I think of the Charlene Johnsons at NOI, and I think of Paul Preston at TechNL, I think of Mark Lane at NEA, just to give you some examples, and there's a ton of them out there. You know, they're really making a significant difference as an industry association at bridging and connecting between their membership and government and other stakeholders, and they're the conduit to kind of make that work. And the example yesterday, the example I used earlier, watching Exxon, well, you know, that was a NOIA function that they sort of put that together, and it was a membership experience kind of session. So we need them to be vibrant. Government needs to support them and use them as a tool to really connect. And so all of our programs, every one of them today, we're building with industry. So our dental program right now, we're in constant communication with the provincial dental board, and we want to hear from them. It's a nationally accredited program. And so we need to hear, what are we doing right? What are we doing wrong? What can we change? What can we enhance? How do we make our graduates better when they're coming out? What are the skill sets that we need to improve our students with to ensure that they're a better graduate and a better employee?
And you know, you hit the nail right on the head. And this is my sweet spot as well, as when you see government and industry and academia all working effectively together, those associations are the conduit to all of that happening. And when I spoke with Tech NL there a couple of weeks ago, it just described the way he described it was that everybody in the boat is rowing together. There's definitely 100% to be made, but everybody is in that boat and they're rowing together because they see a vision, they see a place they need to get to, and it's fascinating to see. But it doesn't happen everywhere, and I know that provinces like Newfoundland and Prince Edward Island, in the Atlantic region in general, that we can use size to our advantage. We have the ability to be agile in our ability to connect with people because of our size, and we use that to our advantage. Can't really be replicated in larger provinces and larger locations, but we use that to our advantage quite effectively. But when all those pieces come together, Craig, it's a magical thing to see happen. There's success for everybody. And that, to me, is a really interesting part about the Newfoundland success, is that everybody in that equation wants to see the other succeed. They're all not trying to get ahead of the other. They all want to see, because they understand that a rising tide here is going to float all boats.
You got it.
Right? And to me, that's such a wonderful thing. Your thoughts on that, Jerry?
Well, you know, Craig, I've 30 years in business development. I was taught very early. I did some work for the Home Builders Association, and there was a lady at the time running that, Rhonda Neary, who taught me an enormous amount about what an association can do. She's since gone on to run the Newfoundland Labrador Construction Association.
Yeah,
but I learned
doing a great job.
Yeah, she is. And I learned a lot about what associations can do. And, you know, we're doing some work for the NLCA now. Tech NL in particular has done an amazing amount over the last 6 months in particular with this fund that ACOA put together. The energy that, you know, and I'm working with Sheldon Payne at Newfound Marketing, helping build that business, and just integrating that into what Tech NL is doing is exciting. I'll tell you someone else during the pandemic that really impressed me, an organization. That was the Board of Trade. St. John's Board of Trade, I think, did an enormous positive thing, bringing speakers on. Charlie Oliver comes to mind, who was a guest on our podcast. Fearlessness, not carelessness. I mean, there was so many people pivoting and changing. They had Kevin Casey on. To me, I've heard over the years, a lot of people say, well, I'm not sure I get anything out of that. Well, I always said, if you're not there, you're not going to get something out of it. But I want to go back to something you said about, the digital space. Again, from my experience, a guy 30 years, I've done a lot of training throughout North America, or Canada mostly, in terms of sales and sales development. And it's always, Jerry, got to be face-to-face. You got to look your client in the eye. Well, what for me has been a transformation is this experience, what we're having right now, the wonderful interaction you and I are having. I've been on, the front tip of the spear for Newfound Marketing, and the business that we've developed based on Zoom and Google Meets is stunning. I will say that we did have to pivot a little bit when we were allowed to go face-to-face, but I do know what we have going for us right now is some sort of a hybrid. And I think about you and what you just said with that campus, sitting there, that shiny campus, just, I guess, touch a little more on what you envision in terms of the integration of maybe, virtual learning with that shiny campus. What's your vision on that?
Yeah, I don't know if I like to be reminded about this shiny campus that's in there, because we've put all this money in, but no, I mean it will be there when we're ready, and I think this province in particular, Janice, we did a bit of a fun video a couple of weeks back to say thank you to all her effort, and I hail that out to all of the chief medical officers and the work they're doing, because it's not an easy job. And I'm an entrepreneur. I want the economy to be moving and everybody to have access. And and I miss every now and again on a Friday heading down to Merch for a beer at 3 o'clock or 4 o'clock with the guys and kind of talking, seeing what everybody else is doing. So that collaboration is no longer there like we would normally do. But I think to your question, when the dust settles on this pandemic, and it will settle, I mean, we're seeing the light at the end of the tunnel now. What does it go back to? And that's what we're sort of, Steve and I are challenging our leadership team now is, guys, are we ready for the next, V 2.0 of this thing? Because at the end of the day, this will settle down, and we have to go back to some normalcy of what is what, and what does that mean? And so I think to us, when we look forward, we see a day where we're continue to push digital transformation inside the confines of the classroom and finding ways for the students to be better. So in our software development program, we've introduced drone technology, robots, and a lot of the students are coding specifically and having some fun with that kind of stuff. So being able to send those around to students at home and be able to do some of the coding they need, for example. But the truth of the matter is, I don't think we're ever going to go back to the way things were, and I'm really happy about that. I'm excited to hear that we can train today. We can train students in our programs around the world, and in particular, when you look at what we're trying to do with digital energy, what we're trying to do with our software development program, we're building best-in-class programs that we can educate individuals worldwide. So the notion on it that we're just going to all of a sudden collapse back into the old way of doing things is a myth. And I don't know if it's the right thing for us to do anyway. And I felt at the time, let me give you some examples of what I mean, even in traditional context. An awful lot of women in particular don't get the opportunity to push through education in this province because they're home looking after children, as an example, and the lifestyle, or they're in a career right now that doesn't allow them to pivot and shift like they would, or they need the training or upskilling to get to the next level. Well, technology changes that, right? They have the ability, depending on the type of pedagogy you're working through and the way in which you're delivering that, can really open up an opportunity where someone can come home at night and complete a diploma granting program through evening courses and what have you. And so from our perspective and context, the game has changed. And so we need to now look for innovative ways that we can change it. And so you can still upskill your people in the workforce to get them ready for digital transformation. It doesn't have to be in a traditional classroom. And the other piece for us that we look at across the province is that we could have a best-in-class program that today, if we were offering it, we have 8 campuses across Newfoundland and Labrador. If we were to offer that program by instructor in a campus, you're never going to have the catchment area in that geographic region to bring that student on. But if you offer that as a province-wide class now or program, now you can have 2 here, 4 here, and 6 here, and 3 here, and you have the cumulative effect to have enough to really drive that program and put that off the ground. That's the importance, that we now can get to people in this province to jump on and do a program through a hybrid kind of learning environment. Frankly, that can be completely different. And another quick example, and then I'll turn it back to you guys for another question, but the notion of, think of dental for a moment. We now, and this is where we're heading towards, we can literally create a mobile dental office that we can shoot across the province. So when we're looking to do labs in partnership with the Dental Association, as an example, they could be working to co-administer that dental office, mobile dental office, that blows into a small community in Newfoundland and Labrador. And so someone can do all their theory online in a learning environment with a whole cohort. But then all of a sudden, through a scheduling kind of effect, we can have a mobile dental office show up and deliver dentistry or dental assisting program in their market. And so you just have to look at this has opened up so much opportunity for us. And it's an exciting time to be a part of it. And for us, when when Alan asked about that creativity earlier, that's what I'm talking about. Be innovative. Look at things through a different lens than you've done in the past, right?
It's interesting, Alan. I'm going to do a follow-up there because one of the things around this time last year, so Alan has traveled extensively around the world, and one of the places he went to was Pakistan. So Alan brought me into contact with a learning group over there, Foster Learning Pakistan. I guess it was, Alan, might be the anniversary of this little presentation. We did a presentation that we were anticipating about 30 people. It was about Zoom presence and looking your best on camera. We expected about 30 people. 100 people showed up, and frankly, that was a lot on one class.
That's awesome.
And, yeah, and it's funny. I had my settings set where I had to admit everybody, so we weren't prepared. And while I'm trying to present, I was like admitting all these people. But anyway, it was interesting, Craig. What Alan taught me and what I learned through this experience, and Alan can jump in there, is that Canada has an incredible brand throughout the world. And I see you've got an international tab on your website. I mean, the ability for you to bring the Canadian brand and what you're doing to countries that are sought after. And it was curious to me because, frankly, I'm thinking Pakistan, what? Do they speak English over there? And they do. So, Alan, I don't know if you want to just jump in on that, because that was exciting for us. In the middle of the pandemic, everything's crashing. Right. And here we are teaching people in Pakistan. Like, that's exciting.
Awesome. Yeah, that's awesome.
It was great. And Pakistan, Craig, is going through the same challenges that you described at the top. There's a brain drain. You've got all of these wonderful, young, talented, innovative people, and they're leaving the country in droves, and they're trying to stop that. And a little group called Foster Learning, which is an online learning platform, they're trying to stem that. They're like you. They're on the pointy end of this thing, trying to stem this and say, we can't let this happen to our country. We can't let this happen to our province. We can't let this happen to our region, to let those talented people leave. So it was a wonderful experience. And Jerry and I are still very much conversation with them around how we can help them. And this was a great conversation that we can really take back to them as well. But, it's fascinating that the pandemic hits. You've got I don't want to bring it up again, but you got a brand new shiny building, okay? But you don't stop, right? A guy like you doesn't stop. Your team doesn't stop. They say, where are we going to be on the other side of this thing? And we don't necessarily have to look like we look now. just because we look like that going in doesn't mean we need to look like it coming out. How do we evolve out of this? How do we provide a better product? It's that type of thinking that's going to make that province so successful. It's the ability to say, okay, I'm in what we used to call in the Navy, I'm in a tactical pause. There's no action right now. Nobody's shooting at me right now.
Right.
How do I utilize this time? I get rested for sure, but I also say, okay, how do I come out of this differently, stronger, better, more resilient? And that's exactly what you're doing. Craig, that has to be celebrated. That's fantastic. It must be to walk into a room and say, okay, folks, how are we going to look differently coming out of this? And then, I mean, the question is great in and of itself, but the responses from your team must be fascinating. Tell me about that.
Yeah, it absolutely is. And I can't express to you enough that, I've played, as Jerry knows, we've played hockey together. Played softball all my life.
You're very good at it too, Craig.
Oh no, maybe I had some younger legs years ago, not anymore. But so I'm a team player. That's how I kind of think. And on this journey, I brought Steve Taylor on board, and he's my business partner. And Steve deserves a ton of credit for where we are as an organization. Just a brilliant mind, and I think both of us together. I kind of, our phrase, you used the term fearless earlier. Our phrase is fearless, but not reckless. And that's kind of our corporate mantra that we drive this organization on. And that's what we believe in. We're fearless. We're not afraid of anything. And we're not afraid to really sort of strut our stuff, but not recklessly. And so we bring that kind of to the relationship with one another as we're driving this business. So I got to sort of make that point on Steve, because it's critically important from my perspective. But the team itself, we've also assembled some of the benefits of this time frame is the talent pool that's out there, and we've assembled an amazing leadership team, frankly, that are first-class individuals that bring a ton of skill set to the table. So when we start to talk to them about some of the new initiatives, and they kind of make fun of us now, because we said, you know what, 2021 is going to be a year of quiet. We're going to just take a year. We closed 3 acquisitions in 14 months last year in the middle of a pandemic, grew our numbers by 60% year-over-year growth. So it was just, we're on this trajectory of growth and scale, and it's all great, but we were fried. I mean, by the time we got to Christmas, we were literally we were wasted in terms of just time frame, and it was tough. And we needed the Christmas break to recharge the batteries. So we told the team coming out into sort of strategic planning in this year, hey guys, we've decided we're really going to go low key. Well, that hasn't happened. And it was only yesterday they're kind of making fun of us, saying, I thought you guys told us we were going to take it easy. We're like, yeah, we thought we were, but we're scaling even more. And part of it is, and it's funny because I had a conversation, this person will remain unnamed, but with a government official yesterday. And I said, we're really trying to take our time. And her response was complete opposite of anything you would typically think of a government official. But she said, no, you guys got to keep driving. You're doing amazing stuff. Keep going. And I'm like, wow. Okay. So, now is not the time to sit idly by and watch the grass grow under our feet. We've got a ton of energy. We're changing the dynamic. I said that on the onset. We're changing the way in which education is seen in this province, and hopefully we will across the country. And the reason for that is that you have the dynamics of the team and the energy and the focus with the skill sets. And I come back to that kind of focus of this group. They sort of treat the same way. They're fearless but not reckless. And when everyone's pulling on the same oars that way, it's turning into some pretty magical stuff for us as we scale our company.
Wow. Well, listen, Craig, this is exciting. I am excited for you. I can feel the passion in your voice. I can feel your lust for life, your desire to grow this company. I'm sure going to work every day doesn't feel like going to work. It must just be a joy to see where this is going, to take your mom's company and to grow it in this way. It's got to be tremendously rewarding for you. I just can't imagine what that must feel like. Craig, we always ask our guests to leave the audience with a piece of advice, something to think about, and a small takeaway, whatever that might be, what's important to you, and then the audience takes that away and then they noodle on that for a little bit. And what would that piece of advice be from you?
Yeah, it's a great question. I mean, there's so many angles I could sort of to come to grips with that. I mean, one final point, just to maybe leap off into that final question. One of the things that I talk a lot about is the ecosystem and making sure that we're working together. And I use this analogy quite a bit. We live on a rock in the middle of the North Atlantic Ocean. And if we don't work together as a group, if we don't bring all of the stakeholders together, we're not going to be successful. And I think if we can continue to do that and continue to bring all of the stakeholders, public education, private industry, government officials, all of that group together. And I say this timelessly, and I will die on the sword trying to get there. It's just part of our mantra. But we have no choice but to work smart and work together to get out from underneath this mess. And make no mistake, this this pandemic has really done a number on us economically, and the hits to other sectors within our province that we're heavily involved in, whether it's natural resources or anything going on in the oil and gas sector. We've got a number of families getting displaced in this province as a result of where the price of oil is today and all of the process that goes around that. So that's the doom and gloom. But that's not where I live. And so I would say that in today's world, more than anything, we have, my advice for people would be come together, look out for each other, make sure that we're working together in unison. I think if we can focus on the problem together, and everybody has a stake in that. I years ago, Keyin College, the former Keyin was a big sponsor of rowing, and I draw that analogy from time to time that you put 5-6 people in a boat to row together. If you've got one or two people not in sync with everybody else, you're going nowhere. You're probably going in circles. And so I would say right now, this ecosystem of Newfoundland and Labrador, when I look at, depending on how this provincial election that we're currently in the middle of goes, we need our leadership at that level. We need our federal leaders. We need our business community. We need industry associations, academia, all together pulling in the same direction. And it is at that moment in time, if we can bring those people together to do the right things and get us on the right path and put the effort in, we can be successful. And so my analogy to everybody is we need to work together here to get out from underneath this. It didn't happen overnight. It's like losing weight. You don't lose it all in one day. You got to take your time. You didn't put it on in one day. We've got to think of it in that context that we've got no choice but to work together to be successful. And I think we can.
Yeah, that's fantastic, Greg. Jerry, I don't know if that losing weight comment was meant for you or me, but anyway.
No, it was me.
Jerry, your final thoughts, buddy.
Jerry's in better shape than I am. He's doing this big circles around me today.
Yeah, the last few months have not been kind to my body.
No, you and me both.
But I got to say, man, there's just so much that we're excited about, with this podcast, just with life in general. But I think about a couple of things just as we clue this up. Financial literacy is one. As you talk, and Craig, about the economy, I've got a 17-year-old and a 13-year-old, and I'm doing my damnedest to be on their radar. You know what it's like with teenagers, trying to have an impact on them. And I keep reminding them that, the finances, their personal finances, are incredibly important. I don't want to hear them go out and buy, not knocking the economy, but don't go out and buy a $65,000 truck if you can't afford the damn thing. It's better to have a few dollars in the bank when a pandemic hits so that you're insulated. That's also, right, as a business person, makes me a little uncomfortable because, we do have to spend to make money to do things. But back to your business model. When I reflect on my own career, I've been a sales and a business development guy, but some of the most rewarding times for me have been training other salespeople. I've had the luxury of going in and talking to the MUN business faculty. I've done the MBA class about advertising and sales. A couple of weeks ago, I did a College of North Atlantic LinkedIn seminar on Zoom. I have a work term student working with me right now, and it's incredibly rewarding to be able to pass on those things that I've learned. I always joke when she's on with me, Chloe Harris, great young lady, but I always joke with clients. I say, yeah, I've got Chloe here. I'm teaching Chloe all my bad habits that I've learned over 30 years. Right? He's getting tired of hearing that, I'm sure, but I just want to say thanks, because I think what you are doing is so important to this province. The ability to shape young minds, and I know they're not all young people that you're dealing with, but just shaping minds giving them hope, I think, is something that you're doing. And that's what this province needs right now, hope. So thank you for that. Al?
Oh, my pleasure.
Well, folks, that's another episode of Gale Force Wins, and what an absolute pleasure it was to speak with Craig Tucker. Craig's on the pointy end of this thing. He's trying to stop that brain drain. He's adding to the conversation, that ecosystem in Newfoundland that's going to make Newfoundland so successful, going to make our country so successful. Craig, I can't begin to thank you enough for the time that you spent with us today. I love your passion. I love your vision on where you want to take your company, where you want to take the province. This is all to be absolutely commended. And the very fact that you start this thing off and you celebrate your mom's achievements to get you here, it's clear to me you're standing on the shoulders of giants as you take this company to the next level, and you help this province and this country redefine the way we educate people. You are truly to be celebrated, sir, for your amazing effort that you're making. And I would only leave the audience with one small tip, and that is, the world needs more Craig Tucker.
Thank you, Alan. I appreciate that. I don't need or expect those type of kudos. I appreciate it. And I too want to reciprocate to you guys. We need more of these type of podcasts where, frankly, it's much more positivity in the world and helping to support and prop up the positive things that are happening in Atlantic Canada. So good job on it, guys, and really celebrate what you guys are doing as well.
Thanks, Craig. Let's all work together and be successful together.
Okay.
Cheers.
Thank you.
Thank you for tuning in to Gale Force Wins. That's Gale Force Wins, WINS.com.